Welcome into a Monday edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Nick Whalen joined, as I am every Monday, by Alex Barutha. We got a special guest on the pod. Those of you listening along, watching live on Twitter, on YouTube, you can see him right here. He is Adam King. He's been writing for RotoWire for a long, long time, been doing a ton of work for us over the years. And Adam, you are currently in the midst of your trip over to the United States from Australia. So tell us about the games that you've already been to. I know you're hitting as many NBA games as you can. What else is on the schedule? Standouts. We'll kind of start there and then move into some of our biggest takeaways from the weekend.
Good to be here. It's good that we can line up. Normally there's a time difference, which is an issue, so not at the moment. What games we've been to? We've been to a couple of Pelicans games, a Celtics game, a Pacers game. And we've got two more Pacers games to go before we head home. Standouts for me, I think we were lucky enough when we went to the Pelicans games, we were able to get VIP pre-game tickets. So we were able to get down right next to the court and watch the shoot around. For me, it was how big some players are and how small some players are. So CJ McCollum was very small. He was a lot smaller than I thought. Mitchell Robinson is very big, stood next to him and he sort of towered over me. The Celtics, I think for me that what stands out is the different environments, the different courts, the different crowds. Like New Orleans, very different to Boston, and then Boston, very different to Indiana as well. The Boston crowd is they're ready for a championship. This year, they're very excited. We actually saw the Pacers game in Boston, where Boston won by 50. So it wasn't a close game, but seeing Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard go off in the fourth quarter, the crowd was just as loud for that as they were for the start of the game. So, it's been a really fun trip, other than getting sick, but that usually happens when you travel. So we're off to the Wembanyama game tonight, which should be fun.
Nice. Very nice. Spurs are in action. Who do they have tonight? Oh, they're at Indiana.
Pacers.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, I'm always like when I look at my scoreboard, I'm always scrolling to the bottom because I feel like they play late games, but they are on the road at Indy. Where were you over the weekend? Did you catch any of the in-season tournament games on Friday?
No, so we just missed those. We missed the Indiana in-season game by one night. So, they played who did that? I can't even remember who they played in that first in-season game. But we caught them on the night after. Right? Yeah, they might have. We caught them the night after. So, we saw the Hornets game. That was very close. So I didn't get to see any of those wild court designs.
So we mentioned CJ McCollum. You said you saw him in person down in New Orleans. Got the news that he's dealing with a collapsed lung. This is now the second time over the last few years that McCollum has dealt with this. I am yet to really see anything definitive as far as how long he could miss. December of 2021 was the last time this happened, and he missed about a month and a half. Should be an evaluation, the next day or so that will provide us some more information on McCollum. But guys, should we be bracing for, a 4 to 6 at least week absence here?
I will say, McCollum missed. This is from Matt Smith on Twitter, who I think he's a basketball monster guy. Last time McCollum had a collapsed lung, he missed 18 games. So like over a month.
Yep.
Two other players who had collapsed lungs were Terrence Jones and Gerald Wallace, and they missed 6 and 7 games. So I think, if you're a fantasy manager, I think you have to be ready for McCollum to miss bare minimum 2 weeks.
Okay.
And since it's like a recurring issue for him, you just can't be surprised if it's a month or more. But it's probably something that I imagine ends up being probably week to week. Like you may not know on Monday if he's planning on playing Friday. Like they may have to kind of take it day by day or something.
What's your level of interest in Dyson Daniels? Is that the obvious pivot? We could see a little more Jordan Hawkins, maybe Kyra Lewis, their first round pick from a few years ago who got hurt. But I think Dyson Daniels is the most obvious fill-in for the next couple of weeks. You kind of forget CJ McCollum is essentially the full-time point guard and one of the only true point guards on this roster. So is that somebody you were grabbing off waivers over the weekend?
Well, what do you think, Adam?
I actually put in a bid for him last night in the industry pickup league, and he ended up going to Mitch Casey for $90 out of $1,000 budget. So Mitch paid up, and yeah, I think it's Dyson Daniels. I think we've seen enough from Hawkins and Matt Ryan. We know who they are. They're not really ready, I don't think. I think Ingram's going to handle the ball a lot more without McCollum. So I think Daniels is the one. If you want to take a flyer on someone, as long as you don't need sort of guaranteed scoring, he's gonna sort of chip in across a few categories on most nights, I think.
Guys, we saw the Memphis Grizzlies last night finally pick up their first win of the season. They avenged a loss to Portland on Friday, getting the 112-100 victory. So far for Memphis, it's kind of been a two-man show with Jared Jackson and Desmond Bane, and we knew that would be the case to some degree. Marcus Smart has had some ups and some downs as well. Hasn't been a great start for him. I watched this Memphis team, and we could talk about some of the fantasy ramifications in a moment, but it feels to me like a team that's relying on a bunch of guys who, if they're your 7th, 8th, 9th man, you're feeling pretty good. But if you're asking Zaire Williams to be your 3rd or 4th minute getter, like that's going to be a little bit of a problem. Like, how concerned are you guys about this Grizzlies team?
I mean, I was pretty concerned to start the year. I was surprised how many people picked their over, on the win totals, although that was before Steven Adams got hurt. I think some of those people maybe changed their tune because the Morant Steven Adams thing was such a crucial part of the offense. But you said it. I mean, there's just, Bane, Triple J, Marcus Smart, like those are really the only guys on this team that I have any confidence in. Even Tillman is pretty up and down. They signed Biyombo. Zaire Williams looks interesting, but he wasn't even in the rotation last year. Like everybody else on this team, it's just they wouldn't even be guaranteed rotation players on some championship contenders. So I'm definitely concerned.
Yeah, I was pretty concerned as well. Steven Adams is pretty important to this team, so not having him there. And then you remember Brandon Clark isn't there as well, so he would be playing big minutes if he was there now, and he's somewhat trustworthy. So, yeah, I was pretty concerned, and I haven't seen anything thus far. I mean, they won last night, but it was against Portland. How many games are they going to win this season? Not many, I don't think. So, yeah, worrying times, I think, in Memphis.
Could be worrying times for the Orlando Magic as well, who are off to a pretty good start. We can quibble about some of the teams that they beat, but they're 4-2 so far. Picked up a nice win over the LA Lakers over the weekend. But guys, we are going down this path once again with Wendell Carter. It's always one step forward, 2 steps back. He's out now for at least the next 3 weeks due to a fracture on a finger in his left hand. So probably won't see Wendell Carter until at or around Thanksgiving. Alex, we saw some monster bids come in. Ken Kreitz, our guy, adding Goga Bitadze for $53 in the RotoWire Stake League last night.
That's out of 100, by the way. It's not the industry pick of 1,000. We have to clarify.
I saw that, and I went to the settings page to double check that the budget was 100.
Yeah, because in NFPKC, it's also 1,000. So it's okay.
Right.
Look, I mean, I put in a bid for Bitadze. I think somewhere in the $15 range. I don't quite remember. I mean, he's someone that I think the casual fan has no idea who he is. People who have played fantasy for the past half decade know that he's a per minute guy.
Yeah, people who've ever written player notes have known him because he's been banged up for 2.5 straight years.
Exactly, and he had a nice game, and if he continues to play 26, basically if him and Wagner split playing time going forward at the 5, I think they can both be fantasy viable in 12-team leagues, maybe more so on 4-game weeks because Bitadze is not going to do 10, 5, and 2 every single game. But what do you think, Adam? I mean, they also have Markelle Fultz is dealing with a knee injury too right now, and has been out past 2 games?
Yeah, Fultz is already out he's been ruled out for tonight, so that'll be his 3rd. It does sound like he was able to go through some of the pregame stuff, so he's getting closer. So I'm hoping it's only another 1 or 2 games because I've got him in a lot of teams. In terms of that center position, I think both players probably have value at the moment. It'll depend a little bit on the matchup. Bitadze will be used a little bit more if they're against your more traditional big center, whereas Wagner has the ability to stretch the floor and switch out a little bit. So I didn't get Bitadze anywhere, but I managed to get Mo Wagner for $3. So while everyone went and bid on Bitadze, I just went $3 on Wagner, and he only played about 20 minutes, I think. So I'm hoping that could maybe creep up to 25 in some matchups, but we'll see. But yeah, Wendell Carter, I'm pretty glad I didn't draft him anywhere.
Well, I think everybody's rushing out to get Bitadze because he had 5 blocks the other night against the Lakers. And I get it. He also had 10 points, 10 rebounds. There's just not a lot of evidence to suggest that, that's anything sustainable. And, if you're picking him up, and it's not like Wendell Carter tore his ACL here. It's like he could be back in the next 3 weeks. Nothing against our guy, Uncle Ken Kreitz. Love him to death. I don't know if I'd want to, spend half of my fab budget on somebody who might only be viable for a few weeks and is likely to have some down games in there. I mean, you look back at last season, how many games did he play? Well, we'll even just say 20 plus minutes. He had 8 games where he played 20 plus minutes. In those games, he averaged 7 points, 8 rebounds, 1.3 blocks. And I don't think this is a situation, where he's playing 30 to 35 minutes. Like you said, Adam, would you rather spend $40 to $50 for Bitadze or $3 to $5 for Mo Wagner? To me, that's a pretty easy decision.
Yeah, and I think one thing about Wagner too in this game. Wagner had 5 fouls in this game against the Lakers,
right.
So he was in a bit of foul trouble. He also took a season high 10 shots from the field in his 19 minutes, and he can play some forward as well. So if for whatever reason they kind of want to go small, Wagner might be a better option there. So yeah, whoever you got, I wouldn't feel bad about it. We'll kind of see how it develops though.
Got a question in the chat from our guy Jordy, who says, is it time to drop Jerami Sochan? He is in a dynasty league, so keep that in mind. In dynasty, I'm willing to see this out. If anything, in that, I would try to trade him as opposed to just straight up dropping him in a dynasty league. But I think we can apply this to redraft as well. I mean, if you're I stayed away from Sochan for the most part, so I don't have a lot of exposure to him. I haven't really had to deal with this just really in best ball. But if you have him right now in a redraft league, are you thinking about cutting bait?
What do you think, Adam?
I'm okay holding him. I've got him in 1 or 2 leagues, and I'm really only in head-to-head leagues. So in the teams that I've got him on, I really just need him to get some assists, some rebounds, not kill my free throw percentage, some defensive stats. So I wasn't relying on him for points or threes or anything like that. So I think depending on your build, I think he's okay to hold because I think the Spurs are invested in him one way or the other, whether it's at as their starting point guard long term or this is a short term thing. They're not in a position where they will need to give up on this idea of him as a point guard after 2 weeks. So I think they can roll with this for a month, 2 months, even if it's not working. Devin Vassell is out at the moment as well with a groin thing. So that probably gives him a bit more opportunity there. So I'm okay holding him. I wouldn't just drop him. As you said, you could maybe look to trade him, but I wouldn't just be dropping him yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's a reason to drop him in dynasty leagues because someone's going to be high on him. So you're probably going to be able to get a trade, like Nick said. And even it's hard to say whether or not he's playing poorly. 9, 6, and 5 with a steal in 27 minutes. Like, that's not bad. I think the upside here is like he's only 20 years old and he fits next to Wembanyama. So if you're in a dynasty league, those 2 things are going in your favor. And even if you think he's playing poorly, he's still ranked 150th. Like he's not killing you. He's still a 4-game week guy. So yeah, I would definitely hang on to him or look to move him if anything.
Got a question or potentially a statement from Adrian here. It reads as a statement. I assume it's a question. Should you try to buy low on Julius Randle, who is off to just a disastrous start to the year? It's kind of he and LaMelo Ball are the guys that are primarily responsible for killing field goal percentage categories right now. At least LaMelo got on track last night, gave you 30, 10, and 10. Julius Randle through 6 games, guys, 13.7 points per game, 27% from the field, 22% from 3. The free throw shooting has also been bad, 61% on the year. He's never been a great free throw shooter, but he's been, at least kind of mid to high 70s. He's had a couple 80-plus seasons. in his career. One, what is going on with Julius Randle? And two, Alex, are you willing to buy low if somebody offers him up?
So he had off-season ankle surgery. And so I assume he basically did nothing, basketball wise over the offseason. I think that's some of it because Randle's not really like a good natural shooter. He kind of has worked his way into becoming a better shooter. And I think taking a whole offseason off for him is probably bad on that front. I would buy low. I mean, this is someone who basically has a fantasy floor when he's been right, basically with New York of 6th, 7th round. And the good news here is he's still taking basically the same amount of shots. Like his usage hasn't really decreased at all, and his assists are actually up compared to last season. So yeah, I mean, if I can trade someone who I would project as like a top 90 or player, over the rest of the season, and I can get Randle in return, I think I would do that.
Yeah. Look, I'm probably about as low as anyone on Randle, but I still think this is a good buy low opportunity because, as you said, he's going to be better than this. He's shooting. I think I saw something the other day. This is the worst start to a season in history in terms of field goal percentage. So he'll be better. Look, I saw him in the warm up when they played the Pelicans, and he just wasn't right. Like you could tell he wasn't where the other guys were in terms of shots falling, just rhythm, that sort of thing. So I think he'll be better. I did read, I think this morning, that there is possibly some conjecture within the Knicks locker room about their direction and their style of play and that sort of thing, which doesn't really come as a surprise to me. But I'd certainly buy low if you can find a manager who's pretty frustrated and just willing to give him up for anything, then you might as well throw an offer out there.
It can't get any worse is the one thing I would say. I mean, it truly can't get worse. Yeah. I think it has to get better. And if you've weathered the storm so far, I mean, with Julius Randle, he hasn't been on your bench, right? You've been thinking the last 2 weeks it's going to get better. It will. So I wouldn't say I'd go out of my way to buy low. But if you can do it without giving up too much, I think, and especially if you're not the one that's been harmed, on your roster for the last 2 weeks by this, you have to assume that he's going to trend upward. Let's see. We got a few more good questions in the chat here. A lot of people have asked us about Miles Bridges. I have no information. I have no idea. Nobody really seems to know. My guess is that he plays at some point, unless Charlotte, kind of gets, for better or for worse, pressured into not playing him. I think that's one of the holdups right now. But it seems the way that Charlotte has operated that unless he is suspended by the NBA or, not allowed to participate in NBA games legally, I think they're going to pursue, him coming back at some point, especially if they continue to struggle. I mean, it no doubt makes them a better basketball team. Obviously there are a ton of things going on off the court, and he's, I think, proven himself to not be anything close to a model citizen. But if we're just asking for fantasy basketball purposes, I don't know when he's coming back, but I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't play at all this year.
Yeah, there was actually, I think news actually came out the other day that unless anything changes between now and when his 10-game suspension is up, whether that's an extra suspension or any additional news. So based on what we know right now, expectations are that he will play in that 11th game. I'm not sure what the date is, but that's what I read, and I've heard of other few analysts talking about that and saying. So I've got him on a couple of my injured slots, and I'm just going to hold and see what happens.
Yeah, again, not a whole lot to say there. Like you said, he is technically eligible. Once that 10th game is served, I think at that point it's just, it's almost reminiscent of the Sean Watson situation in the NFL at some point, where it's like, is the organization willing to stomach some negative PR? If they are, then they probably throw it out there and in their mind hope that it blows over. But I think I would, if you're holding him for now, probably do it for another week. I don't think now's the time to cut bait. See where we get at that 10-game mark, and then you could go from there. Got a couple questions, guys, about Cam Thomas. Adrian asking, basically, do we think Cam Thomas could keep this up? Should we look to trade him? We had another question of, if we do want to trade Cam Thomas, who are the type of players that you could target that have the same ceiling? But first, Adam, I want to get your take on Cam Thomas and whether or not he could keep this up, because it does feel like whenever he's been granted this opportunity in the past, whether it's been this year or kind of in random one-off situations last season, he's a free ticket to 25 plus points whenever he gets the minutes.
Yeah, he's some of this is that Cam Johnson's been out. I don't think his minutes or his workload has a lot to do with like the Claxton absence. Unless you think like, Claxton's going to start playing 30 minutes and then Finney Smith gets like shifted down and it just everyone keeps sliding down and then Thomas gets squeezed. But I don't really think that's going to happen. I mean, this Nets team is just really, it's not that good. They don't have championship aspirations. You don't envision them winning the Eastern Conference or anything like that. So for them, like they have this 22-year-old guy who clearly is one of the most like just talented pure scorers in the league. You gotta let him play a little bit. So like will he continue to play 33 minutes a game and average 26 points? I don't think so, but it's hard for me to imagine even when Cam Johnson comes back, Thomas not seeing 20 minutes a game. But I think this is about as high as his stock will be this season. If you're sort of asking like, is this a sell high point?
Yeah. And, he's a top 40 guy in Roto League so far. It's the points that are pretty much single-handedly doing that. I mean, he's been 85% at the line on high volume, so that helps too. But, he's not a great rebounder. He goes out of his way to not pass. Maybe gets you a steal per game. So I think there's still a little bit of a disconnect as far as, how effective he's been in real life versus fantasy. But the second part of the question, do any kind of demographic type of player come to mind as far as who you would target if you're trying to sell high on Cam Thomas? Maybe somebody in your league needs the help in points, needs the help in free throw percentage. I'm kind of looking at.
You
got a name?
I think Adam's having some internet connection issues.
Okay.
I'll lead into it, and then when Adam comes back, I'll let him take it. But this could be your classic. Hey, could you target Julius Randle? Like, you could.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I think you look to sell high on Thomas for a guy who's underperforming that is like a top 50 or a top 60 player, assuming their shooting gets back on track. I think that's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Are you back with us now, Adam?
No.
I might be. Do you have me?
All right, we're back. We're back, baby. All right. So do you have any players in mind who, if let's say you're trying to sell Cam Thomas, somebody you're targeting? I'm thinking, DeMar DeRozan, somebody like that. I mean, can you aim that high, or do you have to go a tier lower? All right, I think we might have lost that.
You'd have to find a manager who's willing. Yeah.
Okay, keep going, dude. I think there might just be a lag.
Yeah, I think there's a big delay.
Hang on, I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, I would try to just back out and come back into the stream. But Alex, yeah, nonetheless, we'll continue to run through a few players here. It's so tough because we're still early enough on that some teams have only played 5 games, and like the overall season long fantasy rankings aren't really reminiscent of what to expect going forward. I think I'm aiming. You're looking for I think somebody who you project to finish somewhere between 40th and 60th, 40th and 70th in total value. You're not going to pry away Damian Lillard for Cam Thomas, obviously, but I think you find a veteran, maybe a veteran who's off to a slightly slow start, and you go from there.
Yeah, and look, I mean, what Cam Thomas is doing for you in your fantasy leagues is almost exclusively points. Like that's what he's getting you. He's getting you points, and I guess free throw percentage. He's a good free throw shooter. He takes a lot of them, but points are relatively easy to find on the wire. You can stream guys in on 4-game weeks. What's tougher to find is like high-level assist guys.
Yep.
So if you could trade Cam Thomas for someone who's putting up great assist numbers, assuming you need assists, it fits your build, whatever it is, I think that's the kind of move that I'd be looking to make.
Got a question from Marco on Jaylen Green. He's so frustrating to have. Yes, he is. He is very frustrating to have. I don't really have a lot of Jaylen Green in redraft. I got him in our staff keeper league. Took some flyers on him in best ball. I love the idea of Jaylen Green. I still do think long term it should work out. I think him landing in Houston, and especially the situation that Houston's in now, which is, in my opinion, in a roundabout way worse. Now he has to compete with Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet for touches. I just think he's in a really bad spot developmentally, and I don't like how much I'm seeing some like Nick Young, Jordan Poole shot selection from Jalen Green this season. Like he's too good to be playing like that, and I think the lack of discipline and just the fact that Houston is trying to simultaneously develop like 5 players 22 and under at the same time, it's hurting not only him, but it's hurting all of them.
Yeah, I wrote about Jalen Green in an article that was sort of like, do you panic about these specific players who are underperforming? And I didn't quite like have the panic button push for Jalen Green, but I tried to lay it out like there's not a lot of positive indicators right now. It's not like he's just shooting badly. His usage rate is down. If you use the usage rate that also accounts for assists, which is on cleaning the glass, last year he was at 28. This year he's at 26. So he's getting fewer touches. He's not passing as much. Yes, his field goal percentage is down, but really not that much. Same with his free throw, etc. Like he's not improved on defense. He's kind of just the guy he's been since his rookie year. And do you roster that guy in fantasy? I can't blame you because you can still put him in on 4-game weeks and hope that he kind of bounces back sooner than later, or I should just say improves in general. But I would not be married to the idea of like rostering Jalen Green, especially in like a 10-team category league.
All right, interesting one here, Alex, from the TaylorMade clan. From one golfer to another. I appreciate the username here. Got offered Zach LaVine for Pascal Siakam, 10-team points league. Do I take it, or do we see Pascal Siakam turning things around as we welcome Adam King back to the mix here? Alex, I am dealing with the Pascal Siakam woes in a number of leagues right now. Had that big game, I believe it was against Milwaukee last week, but other than that, man, it feels like he's like switched bodies with Scottie Barnes. He's already had like 4 disaster games, including his worst game of the year against the San Antonio Spurs last night. 8 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. I like Julius Randle, I do think Siakam gets a turnaround. The track record certainly suggests he will, but even if Siakam was just off to an average start, I think Siakam versus LaVine is an interesting one to talk about.
If you have us, Adam, do you want to take this one?
I've got you. Have you got me?
Okay. Yeah,
you got you, buddy.
Okay. All right. Who would I rather? Oh, it's actually a tough one. Yes, look, Siakam has looked pretty bad. The Raptors have looked pretty bad. So I'd probably take LaVine in a points league. It's pretty close for me. I do think, as you said, Siakam will get better, but I think LaVine's role, just what he does, is pretty much guaranteed every night. So I'd probably lean LaVine slightly, but it's pretty close for me.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way, actually. I mean, I have to admit, I was big on Siakam this draft season. I thought he was definitely a 3rd-round guy. Like, if he was there for me, I was almost never letting him get past. I thought with the absence of Fred VanVleet, that he would really step up more into a number one role. But like Nick mentioned, it's the Scottie Barnes show and even the Dennis Schroder show, who's been playing excellent for them. And Siakam, yes, he's not shooting very well, but his usage rate is down 7%. That is massive. That's a massive decrease. He went from 29 to 22 right now this season, and LaVine is back up at 28. And when the difference is that big in usage, honestly, I just want to lean on the guy that's a bigger part of the offense. And right now, that's LaVine. And LaVine is not shooting that well either, and his assists are relatively low. Neither of these guys are like pure specialists either. It's not like Siakam has some low usage rate, but he's a block specialist or something. No, it's like these guys are both they need touches. So I would lean on the LaVine side because I think they both LaVine probably has a higher ceiling this year, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, I've been very concerned with what I've seen from Siakam. And this is a trade that I may have to be seeking out myself at some point. Speaking of the Raptors, is Scottie Barnes a big sell high? Asks Raya. If so, who do you think you can get for him, or do we just hold? Alex, what do you think about this one? I'm looking at Scottie Barnes. He is 10th in 8 category per game value so far. So certainly not somebody that you're, in a hurry to offload with how well he's playing. And with each passing game, I feel like I'd be less and less inclined to deal him. But what say you?
Yeah, with these sorts of questions, you have to ask yourself what is sustainable and what is not sustainable. Most of the time, this comes down points wise. This comes down to volume, and percentages. And he's shooting 51% from the field. Not that high for a guy like, or excuse me, it's not crazy high for a guy like him. I expect his 42% 3-point shooting to come down, but I think his free throw percentage is fine. Don't really expect much from like a rebound and assist standpoint to change. I will say a lot of his fantasy value is coming from his 2.1 blocks per game. Last season, he averaged 0.8. So if that comes back down and kind of normalizes to like 1.3, 1.4, yeah, it's going to be a big hit to his fantasy value because blocks are weighted so heavily in a category league. But at the same time, I don't think I would trade him unless I could get like a guaranteed, like a 25th ranked player for him. Like if you want to trade me Karl-Anthony Towns or something like that for him, I'm going to think about it, but I would probably just keep Siakam or Barnes if I just had him at this point.
Yeah, I probably agree. I was going to say top 30, so
Sure.
So top 25. His blocks, I don't think they hold at 2.1. I could see him blocking over a shot again, so 1.0, 1.1. This is sort of what we were hoping for last season from him. Everyone was pretty high on him. They thought he was going to run the offense a bit more, and it didn't happen. And now that Van Fleet's gone, I guess they've just gone to him a little bit more. But if you watched his last game, which was it last night's game? Maybe he was pretty bad in the first half. I think he only had like 3 points at halftime, and then he just went off in the second half and maybe overtime. I can't remember if that game went to overtime, but it hasn't been all sort of roses and rainbows. So there have been some down points, but I do think he's in for a good season. But as you said, I probably would be looking for a second rounder, third rounder at minimum.
All right, we got a couple questions here from our guy Free Key. Has asked us about Nicolas Claxton. If you're frustrated with that situation, you don't want to deal with however long he's going to be out. Now dealing with I believe a high ankle sprain, and there's been some indication that this could be multiple weeks, if not months. Who are the type of players that you could offer? You obviously you're selling low on Nicolas Claxton, so you might have to buy low as well. Do you have any interest in Derek Lively and Russell Westbrook? Are there any other kind of struggling young players or veterans that you're pretty confident are going to bounce back?
I think if I have Claxton, I'd be holding for an offer like Lively and Westbrook. Although I think if you have Lively and Westbrook, it's like worth the shot to try to get Claxton because the ankle issue, it really is unclear. Like, we had Eric Slater of Clutch Points report that a high ankle sprain is a 6 to 8 week recovery timetable, but the Nets are kind of treating him as day to day. So you can't even be shocked if Claxton's out 2 months. So maybe there's an impatient manager, especially if they're at the bottom of their league and they just need points, or they just need production. But that's something you could think about, I think, from both sides.
Yeah,
well, I mean, first and foremost, Adam, are you looking to sell Nicolas Claxton? I think is one way to look at it.
I'm probably not. I don't have him anywhere, so personally, I'm not. But if you do have him, I probably wouldn't, just because I don't think you're going to get anything back that's equal value at the moment. As you said, it would only be if you can cop that loss, because you would have drafted him wanting rebounds and blocks. So that's what you'd be potentially looking to get back in a trade if you are looking to shore up those categories. Lively and Westbrook. Lively's been a bit up and down. He has looked good at times, and then he has looked like a rookie at times. Westbrook, we don't know what his role is going to look like with Harden there now. So if you're looking to try and get Claxton, just throw a low offer out and see what happens. But if I have him, I'd probably be hesitant if possible, because we are only in week 3. So maybe we get some more clarity at some point in the next week about whether this is a 2-week injury or a 6 to 8 week injury.
Another quick one on Siakam. This is quickly devolving into a Pascal Siakam pod here. Would you trade it for MPJ? Is that selling too low?
I think that's selling too low. Yeah. Siakam touches the ball and still handles the ball enough for me to want him over MPJ. Not to mention Porter's injury history.
I'd probably do it for MPJ.
I don't know if I'm buying MPJ at that price. I mean, he's been off to a good start, but I think he kind of is who he is at this point. And the promise of him developing into a true star level player just doesn't really seem to be there. Even as he stayed healthy, he's just kind of become the spot up guy, and the rebounding tends to come and go. The defensive stats haven't really been there, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I have Siakam on so many teams, Alex. But I couldn't quite settle for that return. Interesting question from Marco. What do you project Harden's stats to be? I mean, difficult to say, of course. And I think part of it depends on, how long do they insist on trying to start Russell Westbrook? I think that could last like 2 games tops.
Yeah.
Maybe it works out and they find a way, but that just doesn't seem sustainable. I think in talking to a lot of people about this, Alex, I found myself to be on the more optimistic side with Harden. Even though he's forced his way in and out of so many spots, like wherever he's gone, he's produced, especially for fantasy. And we've seen him play alongside multiple stars before. So, the presence of PG and Kawhi doesn't really scare me all that much. It's like, even if Harden's not the best player on his team, he always ends up with the ball in his hands because that's kind of the only way he knows how to play. So what do you kind of look at what he did last year and say, maybe you take away 5 to 10% of that to be safe? It's tough to say for sure, but I think he could still be a pretty elite fantasy player.
I think he can be a very good fantasy player. Last year he averaged 21 and 11, 6 rebounds as well, and 37 minutes. Some of this equation to me comes down to, is he going to continue playing 37 minutes? If the Clippers really are this good with him, and he is 34, maybe they cut his minutes down to 33, 34 minutes a night, especially when you have guys like Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and even Westbrook who can take on more usage. After the trade, I went in and changed his projections because that's what we do. I projected him for 19.7 points and 7.5 assists. The assists I know are a bit low, but think about how much Kawhi handles the ball and Paul George, and how much is Westbrook going to be out there? I would rather under project him than over project him. I also gave him a 3-minute per game discount or a decrease compared to last season. So, I mean, I still think he, under that sort of premise, and you have him projected for 66 games, I think he'll return 3rd or 4th round value. So I think wherever you drafted him, you probably drafted him, especially late in the draft season, like maybe in the 3rd round, I think he'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, by the end of draft season, he was going in the mid 50s. And like when I did my NFBKC, I think he went like 55th. That was the day before the season. I never really felt like he was in danger of missing the entire year. And I think it probably would have been slightly better for his fantasy value to stay in Philly. But if you got him in the 40s or 50s, I think you're going to be just fine. It's hard for me to imagine Harden falling off to that degree. Oh, man, let's see. Talk some Dennis Schroder. The Cousins asking about, what do you think about Schroder? Is it sustainable for what he does statistically? He's been a vastly better fantasy player than Pascal Siakam so far. I would like to say it's not sustainable, but if you could just tell me that he's on this roster the whole year, I think it kind of is, partially because they have nobody behind him.
They have nobody behind him. He is still, I saw this stat, I think when they were like 3 games into the season, but I just double checked. And yes, he is still 9th in the NBA in touches per game. To me, that is like a massive stat for Schroder. 25% usage rate. To me, this is pretty sustainable. There's not a ton that Schroder is doing right now, especially when you consider how much he is touching the ball. That is really unsustainable. I mean, he's not going to continue shooting 42% from 3. That's not who he is. It's going to probably normalize down to 33%, but you only lose 1 point a game off of that. So yeah, I think if he averages like 15 and 8 for the rest of the year, I just don't see why he couldn't do that, sort of given like the underlying usage.
Got a question about Buddy Hield from Brandon. Buddy Hield thoughts? I'm very pro Buddy Hield, as you know. I've telling everybody who will listen that since he's been in the league, he's played 23 more games than anybody else. He never misses time. He consistently finishes second in the NBA in threes behind either Curry, Lillard, Clay, or Harden. I think he'll probably do it again, even though his minutes have been up and down, even though they might trade him at some point. He is somebody that I love rostering. It feels like his cost never increases the way it should. Like there's always a 30 spot difference between where he finishes in total value and where he's drafted. But until he has, some sort of severe injury, I don't care if he's starting. I don't care if he's coming off the bench. I mean, he's playing fewer minutes than last season. He's still giving you 3.2 made threes per game in what feels like it's been a slow start. So I'm very pro Buddy Hield. If someone's looking to sell him, I am buying.
Yeah, it's tough to say after they didn't agree in that extension. He's coming off the bench now. His minutes, like you mentioned, been up and down. To me, he needs probably 30 minutes a game, maybe only 28 to be like a 12-team guy, depending on your build. He's getting 24 right now, but we mentioned it's up and down. I mean, I think if you drafted him, it's a hold. I think if he's on the waiver wire, you can just grab him. I don't think there's a reason not to. That's where I stand on him.
We got a question about Trey Murphy from Ian. Is Trey Murphy playing this month? I would be pretty surprised if he doesn't. I mean, there's a video of him like 2 days ago shooting around during pregame in basically full uniform. Looked good to me. I mean, looked like somebody who could play very soon. I think the initial timetable from early September was 8 to 12 weeks, 10 to 12 weeks. So we're nearing kind of the conclusion of that. I mean, obviously we don't know exactly when he'll be back, but I would be very shocked if he doesn't play at some point in November. Yeah,
I will mention Adam King will not be returning. His internet is too bad to continue. But we appreciate his effort and his insights. Okay. But yes, Trey Murphy, like you mentioned, the timetable that they gave him initially puts an estimated early return, like the earliest expected return at the middle of this month. So yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance he plays this month. I would be shocked if he was not on the court by December 1st. Mm-hmm. So I think whatever you drafted him for, you stash him on your IR. You don't have to worry about anything like crazy.
Yeah, to use a turn of phrase that has become legendary at RotoWire, barring a setback, Trey Murphy will be playing at some point this month. Tyus Jones, Alex, Skeeter221 asks, is Tyus Jones a must-add if he was dropped in a 12-team 9-cat head-to-head league? He has not surpassed 30 minutes this season. That is accurate. He has not surpassed even 28 minutes this season. Got off to a pretty nice start. Had, through 3 games, 14 points, 7 assists, 1.5 steals. You're feeling good. But these last 2 games, 22 and 24 minutes. I don't really know what Washington is doing with the rotation right now, because it's not just Tyus Jones. Like, it's not like they're siphoning off his minutes to somebody else. It's like Kyle Kuzma's minutes have been down. Jordan Poole's minutes have been down as well. They've gone to a more egalitarian approach, I guess is one way to say it. Part of it is they're constantly facing big deficits, right? When you're down 20 going into the fourth quarter against Miami, it's just going to lead to, more scrubs seeing minutes. But I mean, they've been playing, routinely like 13 guys most nights, which is just horrible for fantasy.
Nobody on the Wizards is averaging 30 minutes a game. They don't have a single player averaging 30 minutes, which I don't know if that's ever happened before through like 5 games of an NBA season. Is he a pickup in a 12-teamer? I think he probably is, but I would not pick him up and expect him to start seeing like 32, 33 minutes a game, because I think that would require Washington to be really competitive. And of course, Jordan Poole and Kyle Kuzma are doing so much in their offense that there's just kind of scraps left for him, because Jones is more of a floor general, right? And they're not really letting him do that. I think he's a 12 because he's ranked 125th in 8-cat, which implies on a 4-game week, you throw him in there. But yeah, it's not, I don't think it's like a league winner to pick him up.
Dyson Daniels or Jordan Hawkins, presumably as a replacement for McCollum. I would lean Daniels. Some more unknown there, but I think better fantasy potential. Whereas to me, Hawkins is the guy if you need threes, if that's a category of need in a roto league, go grab him. I mean, he's jacking up like 8 threes a game over the last week and a half. But I have a little more faith in Dyson Daniels as the overall better fantasy player.
Yeah, this is a tough question to answer. It's actually Kyra Lewis who's seen the most minutes with McCollum off the floor, followed by Dyson Daniels. But Daniels only has a 9% usage rate in those 58 minutes. Some of that's because he hasn't committed a turnover. 8 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds. And like you mentioned with Hawkins, he's out there jacking up, 12 threes per 36 minutes without McCollum on the floor. So it kind of depends what you want, right? If you want assists, grab Dyson. If you need threes, grab Hawkins.
Malcolm Brogdon has been looking really good, says the Cousins 9855. Thoughts on him? Yeah, he has played well. He's been seeing a ton of minutes. He's somebody who, like Shaedon Sharpe, has picked up a few more minutes in the absence of Anthony Simons. The only thing really holding him back in category leagues is the field goal percentage is way down. I mean, he's under 40% from the field. He's at 33% from three. So he's losing some efficiency. But other than that, I mean, he's on track for what might be the best counting stat season of his career. The thing with Brogdon is, how long is he on this roster? I think at some point, he's going to get scooped up by a contender. The question is that a month from now? Is that at the trade deadline? Is it sooner? I don't really know. I think with Brogdon, I'm just holding him. If somebody, for some reason is offering me Malcolm Brogdon trades, I'm willing to hear that. But I don't know if I'd be actively selling him. If he's going to be out there for 35 minutes a night with no Anthony Simons for the next month, I'm just going to ride that out.
Yeah, and Scoots missed the past 2 games. That's been huge for Brogdon's usage. And I think he's definitely a hold until Simons comes back. But even when Simons was available, I think it's I think you could probably expect Brogdon to still play 20 to 25 minutes a game, and he proved to be fantasy relevant last year when he was seeing that many minutes. So he's definitely a hold. Maybe he's a sell high again, depending on who you can get. But I think this production, he's done this in the past.
I got a question about Herb Jones, very Pelicans heavy part of the podcast here. The way I'll frame this one to you is I really like Herb Jones, especially for steals and blocks. Those have both been there lately. Give you some threes every now and then. He actually went 9 of 9 at the free throw line against Detroit last week. But I think the concern with Herb Jones is, okay, when Trey Murphy's back, what are we looking at? So in the next week or so, are you maybe floating out some Herb Jones offers, looking to cash in before Murphy returns?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind doing that because, like you mentioned, when Murphy comes back, Murphy's a better player. He fits better within their offense because he's a floor spacer and Herb Jones isn't. And then you have the McCollum situation too now. So Herb Jones, he might have some nice games coming up, and you'll be able to sell high. But I think when both of those guys, like last season, he played 30 minutes a game, but Ingram and Zion Ingram and Zion combined for 75 games or something. So he got more minutes and more usage. If everyone in the Pelicans is healthy, it's not easy for Herb Jones to see 29 minutes, and his usage is going to be even lower than it's been. So to me, he's a sell high if that's sort of the angle of the question.
Yeah, I would be looking at it that way as well. How about Jaden McDaniels? We'll take a few more of these, but before we get out, off to a bit of a slow start. Has only played in 3 games so far. The minutes have not really been there, 20 to 24 minutes in all 3 games. He's given you some blocks. That is about it. Are you willing to drop him at this point, or do you need another week or so?
I need another week. He's like you mentioned, if he can shake off the injury, we have to see if that's the case. So that's a hold.
Okay. Who do you guys think is leading the Rookie of the Year race, and who do you think will ultimately win it? Well, Skeeter, we have a fantastic page over at rotowire.com. You can check out updated futures odds. You can compare sports books. And I will tell you right now that the odds-on favorite, at least at the DraftKings Sportsbook, is Victor Wembanyama by a lot. He is minus 360. That's the heaviest those odds have been, dating all the way back to the summer. You got Chet Holmgren at 5-1, and then a huge drop-off down to Scoot, Brandon Miller, and Asar Thompson. Those guys are all 25-1. I mean, it's Wembanyama's award unless he gets hurt, right? I don't see any way around that. I mean, it could be. Did Embiid end up winning it the one year that he only played 30-some games? Was that the Malcolm Brogdon year?
I think that was the Brogdon year.
But there was significant momentum because Embiid was so clearly the guy, and he played less than half the season. Even with Wembanyama, it's if he just gets to the 50 game mark, that honestly might be enough. Especially with Scoot not looking good. I mean, that was kind of the guy that was going to be in position to play a ton of minutes and put up big numbers. Holmgren's going to have something to say about it, but it's still between those two. It's so obviously Wembanyama right now.
Yeah, you mentioned the odds. They're as short as 350, as long as minus 400. PointsBet feels the strongest about it.
It's 2 weeks into the year.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, to me, when I watched him play, Wembanyama should be the fan. I mean, the Raptors, the Raptors ended up coming back and winning that game last night. But through the first half of that game, Toronto's a bad 3-point shooting team. They had no idea what to do with Wembanyama because they were trying to go to the rim, and Wembanyama was standing there, and they were like, "We can't do this." He was dominant. I think the point of yes, he could get injured. I think that's a good point. Although personally, I think Holmgren's actually more of an injury risk, watching the way that his body moves and the way that he falls and stuff. But yeah, to me, Chet's only a bet as you think Wembanyama is going to get hurt or something and you want more value.
Mm-hmm. Reminder to everyone listening live here on YouTube or on Twitter, or if you're listening to this in podcast form, we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. It's the #1 platform for NBA best ball and DFS player pick'em contest. If you have not tried Underdog yet, new Underdog users receive a first-time deposit bonus up to $100 and a free 6-month subscription to RotoWire. Just use the promo code RWNBA. That's RWNBA. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or download their app and use that promo code RWNBA to get a free 6-month subscription to RotoWire and a deposit bonus up to $100. We're also brought to you by Rival Fantasy. LeBron versus Jordan, Magic versus Bird, Barkley versus McHale. Basketball is synonymous with legendary player rivalries. They make the game more fun and give fans the storylines that raise the stakes every time those players meet on the court or come up in conversation. Now, every player matchup and head-to-head debate can be settled on Rival Fantasy. This NBA season, you can play challenges where you decide which player will score more fantasy points in their next game. Play the Rival Fantasy in-house challenge or create your own and get a friend in the mix with customizable social challenges. Sign up at joinrival.com/RotoWire. If you do that right now, you'll get a $200 deposit match. It's time to step up to the challenge on Rival Fantasy. We'll see you in the arena. All right, one more. Then we'll hit a few more questions and be on our way. Vivid Seats. The NBA season is here and it's underway. On behalf of our friends at Vivid Seats, let's get one thing clear. Nothing beats seeing your favorite team crush it on the court to the sound of thousands of screaming fans. Every dunk, dribble, and heart-pounding play of your favorite team live and in person. And because Vivid Seats is the only ticketing company where you can earn rewards on every purchase, you can score amazing deals and unrivaled annual rewards. You can get those all season long. Plus, with a 100% buyer guarantee, you can be sure your ticket will be as legit as your love for the game. Visit vividseats.com or download the app today and use promo code ROTOWIRE for $20 off your first $200 purchase. That's ROTOWIRE, ROTOWIRE, for $20 off your first purchase of $200 or more. Download the app or visit vividseats.com. Vivid Seats, experience it live. All right, good to get that business out of the way. We thank all of our sponsors right here on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Alex, we'll hit 2 or 3 more questions and then be done for the day. But we do remind you, we do this every day, Monday through Friday. We got live podcast streaming right here on the RotoWire YouTube channel. You can find it on our socials as well. We appreciate everybody jumping in and sending us some questions. Ground Life TV says Jerami Grant thoughts. Alex, I was thinking about this weekend as I do my box score, checking in the morning and at night. We're seeing some Carmelo Anthony type of lines from Jerami Grant, who is doing just nothing but scoring, maybe a few rebounds here and there. The assists are down. The defensive stats have completely evaporated. But at least he's giving you points.
He is giving you points, and that's pretty much what you drafted him for. I mean, his numbers this season are not that different from what he was doing last year, although he's not shooting as well. So once his shooting improves, it's possible he sets a career high in scoring this year, just based on improved percentages. But yeah, I don't expect the rebounds to pop up or anything, partially because DeAndre Ayton is trying to lead the NBA in rebounds. And then the assist stuff, Brogdon is handling a lot of the ball now. Simons is going to handle when he's back. Sharp's been handling in the meantime. So yeah, I think what he's doing right now is essentially what he's going to do for the rest of the year.
Yeah, you just hope that the percentages improve, and if they do, he's still going to be a fine fantasy asset. But any hope of Jerami Grant, everything running through him, I've almost given up on that already, especially with Simons gone. At first, I'm all right, I got all these Jerami Grant shares. Here we go. and he's somehow like passing the ball less than ever, despite being the most established option on that team. So yeah, if you're in it for the points and you kind of know what you're signing up for, then you'll be fine. But it doesn't look like he's going to, have notably higher upside this year than he has in the past. Dillon Brooks. Are the numbers sustainable for Dillon Brooks? We talk a lot, Alex, about the Houston Rockets. They got too many mouths to feed. It's been frustrating for Jalen Green, Jabari Smith. Even Fred VanVleet has had his ups and downs. Not Dillon Brooks, baby. 5 games in, 18 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals. He's shooting the lights out, right? 60% from 3, 60% from the field, 93% at the line. To me, I think that's probably where the regression comes, believe it or not. I'm going to say it. I'm brave enough to say Dillon Brooks will not shoot 60% from the field. But in terms of the counting stats, I guess the rest of this legit?
I think the rest of it is fairly legit. He's never averaged more than 1.2 steals in his career, but he also has 0 blocks right now, and he's been more of like a 0.3 blocks guy. So I think you're kind of balancing out there. Yeah, I think everything but the percentages are sustainable. His usage rate's actually 4% lower than it was last year. And this is kind of where, I would definitely sell high personally. I would look to move off of this immediately, because when he finally starts shooting 40% from the field again, he's going to be averaging 13 points a game instead of 18 points a game. So it's definitely a sell high for me.
All right, Steve Sexton, who we can only assume is a relative of Colin Sexton. He said he was offered Darius Garland and Daniel Gafford in exchange for Tyrese Maxey. Is this a fair deal?
Wow. It might be.
I think it's a fair deal. It's a fair offer.
It's absolutely a fair offer. The person that offered this to you definitely respects you and respects the sanctity of fantasy basketball. I think this more so depends on how you feel about Gafford, because Garland and Maxey, I think, have probably similar upside this season. I think Maxey does have more upside, but given the way that Gafford has looked, which is just not amazing, and the muted minutes for Washington, I think I would rather be on the Maxey side. But if you're really thin on centers, for example, I would think about it.
I think rest of season, Garland versus Maxey, is going to be really close. Maxey probably regresses a little bit. It's been as good of a start as possible through 2 weeks. I do think Maxey could absolutely finish higher than Garland, but I don't think it would be a huge gap. So you're totally right. I think it depends on, one, how you view Daniel Gafford, how sustainable you think his role is, and perhaps more importantly, do you need a center? If you need help at center, then I would say probably take this deal. It's not a bad deal.
Right.
All right. Try to find 1 or 2 more here to end on. Talked about Harden. Here's a good one. Is Grant Williams almost a must roster in 10 or 12 team leagues? Playing a lot of minutes for a Dallas team that doesn't have a whole lot outside of Luka and Kyrie. He started all 6 games so far, 15.5 points, 5 rebounds. But that's about it. He's hitting a bunch of threes, I guess. 3.8 made threes per game. If you're playing in a roto league, then he's probably a must roster, especially in a 12-teamer.
I think I might zag. I think I'm going to zag off you. Yeah, I think he's a sell high. Okay. Because he's shooting 56% from 3. And how many of his field goal attempts are coming from 3? 7 of his 9 field goal attempts are coming from 3, and he's shooting 56% from distance. There's no uptick in usage. The other stats aren't really doing much for me. So I wouldn't blame anybody for rostering him in 12s. He's shooting so hot, you almost have to. When a guy's this hot, you might as well keep him. Mm-hmm. But if you get offered a top 100 player for him, I think you have to take that deal the second that you see it pop up on your phone.
Okay, we'll end on this one, as I put the wrong one up there. Desmond Bane for McCall Bridges. So I don't know, what side the question asker is on here, but we'll just talk about these two. If you could roster one going forward for the rest of the year, who do you got?
I think it's Desmond Bane.
I think so.
Bridges is not doing really anything more than he was doing last season, which is of course very good. But Bane is the clear number 1 option on that team. They have until Morant comes back, they have no other legit scoring options, no other playmaking options. The Nets have shown that, well, partially because of Cam Thomas, They have other guys who can score for them. So I would rather have Bane.
I think the mark in favor of Bridges is that there is the specter of John Morant coming back, and what does that do for Desmond Bane? If you take that away, then it's, to me, pretty clearly Bane. But I think it is fair to say, okay, 20 games from now, do we see Desmond Bane, regress to maybe being the third option, given how important Jaren Jackson's become? But yeah, I've been disappointed with Bridges, man. I mean, he had that incredible run right after the trade last year. And, I saw him go in the first round of some early drafts. Did feel like that cooled off a little bit. But he's still been pretty good. Like, the efficiency has been about the same as last year. He's not shooting the three quite as well, but he's still at 46% from the field, 91% at the line. The defensive stats haven't quite taken a step forward, but he's done about all he could, I think, to live up to pretty high expectations and what's ultimately a weird situation in Brooklyn. I'm with you though. I think if gun to my head, I would go Desmond Bane, but I think that's a pretty fair question. I think Bane, it feels like is off to the hotter start, whereas a month from now we could look back and say, okay, Bridges might be the guy with higher upside. But good question there by N Paracha. We appreciate everybody listening along, asking us questions in the chat. Makes us a lot more fun, makes it a lot more productive for everybody. Make sure you continue to check us out Monday through Friday on the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball YouTube channel. You can always find our streams on Twitter. You can even find it on the RotoWire Facebook, I think, if you're into Facebook at this point. But give us a follow. You can follow me at WHA1EN. You can follow Alex at Barutha Alex on Twitter. Feel free to hit us up there with any fantasy questions as well. We thank you for listening. Tomorrow, you'll have Dr. Ray on the mic. I'll be with Brandon Kravitz on Wednesday. We'll have Rick Hamla and Dr. Ray on Thursday. And then Alex, Ken, and Shannon coming at you on Friday.